The show where there are no penalties, nothing is offside, and everything is fair game. This is The Gloves Are Off.
Hello and welcome to another edition of The Gloves Are Off. I'm Moses Woldu, and we got a great show for you, plus some great guests. And my co-host, Andrew Brethauer. How's it going, my man?
I'm great. I'm not a great guest. I should be.
Well, you're my co-host.
I'm a great co-host.
There you go.
Yeah.
My sidekick.
Yeah. Well, folks.
I see how you didn't like that.
That's how we're going.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to you.
To you as well. No green from either of us.
Yeah,
though.
I know. I totally butchered this, and that was on me. So, but this guy was smart enough to come out with it, and he's also the play-by-play guy for the Bonneville Pontiacs. Robb Hunter, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time from us, from good old Bonneville, and making the trip and representing the Pontiacs, which, by the way, I want to get to, because they have a great series, a heck of a series right now with the Lloydminster Bobcats. It's now a 2-1 series. At one point, after the first two games, the way the crowds look like when they were at the Civic Center here in Lloyd, it was pro-Bonneville. You look at the way they played, it was all Bonneville. However, things started to change in Game 3 after about midway through the second. The Bobcats looked like they had a little bit of life. Couple plays, though, were a little controversial. A play with Dylan McCombie, a little roughing penalty, led to a 5-on-3 goal that equalized for the Bobcats. And a little bit later, you had Kevin Dara making a trip. I don't know. What do you guys make of that? Ended up leading to the game-winning goal by Dara himself on the same shift. So what do you say about that, Rob? I'll give it off to you first.
Yeah, I kind of like the intro to the show here today with the gloves are off, there's hardly any penalties and no offsides, and it sounded an awful lot like Game 3. It was interesting. I mean, it's what happens in the northeast zone of Alberta some nights, and was that a roughing penalty on Dylan McCombie to put a team down 5-on-3? That's a tough call to make halfway through a third period in a one-goal hockey game when perhaps both guys could have gone. Perhaps you just let that play go because it's not really resulting in anything. And then when Ryan Black, skating through the slot with a pretty good opportunity, gets hacked down to the ice that leads exactly to the game-winning goal, it's an interesting time in Game 3.
Yeah. Do you see that same argument there, Andrew?
I do. Like the roughing call is, you either give it to one or both or none. It's not a one-person call. Like, in my opinion, that was like Bobcats are taking him out of the play just as much as he's throwing a punch. So if you're going to give it to one, you got to give it to the other as well. And then the Dara tripping, like that one's just, I don't know how you don't. I know how you don't make that call at 2 minutes left, third period in a tied game in Game 3, but that is such a blatant, like crystal clear tripping call that if you miss that one, you've now set the tone for the rest of the period, the rest of the game, possibly the rest of the series. That kind of stuff might get away, and that was such a blatant trip. Like you don't want to criticize the team from my perspective, but you have to. That was such a blatant trip.
So did they get I'll say this. I want to rephrase this question and say it the right way. Did the Bobcats benefit from those calls, or were they the better team? Because it looked like Bonneville, they weren't the same team that came here in Lloyd on Friday and Saturday. They looked much more timid, which is quite surprising considering you have a 2-0 series lead.
Yeah, I think that both teams really looked really sloppy in the first period. It was not a well-played first period at all, and I think that you can chalk that up to nerves, and that you got to remember these are teenagers out there. And Bonneville playing in front of the largest crowd of the year, second largest crowd in the franchise history. 105 fans away from actually setting that franchise record for attendance. So they're feeling the nerves. Obviously, the hype all week long in Bonneville has been huge. The team, winning those games in Lloydminster, the first ever Bonneville-Lloydminster matchup. I think there was some nerves on behalf of the Bonneville Pontiacs, and I think there was some nerves on behalf of the Lloydminster Bobcats as well, knowing then just how important that Game 3 was. They needed that win. They fall down 3-0 in the series. The series is over. Well, now all of a sudden it's a series, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun the rest of the way, and I don't know how it's going to pan out, but I think there was some nerves early on. I think Bonneville started to get their game under them a little bit in the second period. I thought they played fairly well throughout the second half of the second period, and actually not that bad in the third either. But a game-tying goal on the power play after the Dylan McCombie roughing penalty, the game-winning goal after the non-call on that trip. But I don't want to chalk it up to just those two calls. Lloydminster got a couple good calls. Bonnyville had a couple good calls in games 1 and 2, and they took advantage, and their power play was lights out. The Pontiac's power play in game 3 was 0 for 5. So, I mean, they had their power play opportunities as well and didn't take advantage, while Lloydminster did.
So was it just more so a slow motor, or is this going to be a continuing problem for the Pontiacs then?
This will be interesting to see. I think this is going to be the game that tells the tale for the series, is that you get over the big crowds, you get over the hype of game 3, you get over it all, and you come out and play hopefully your best game of the series if you're the Bonnyville Pontiacs in game 4, and that's saying something because I haven't seen them play as well as they did in game 2 all season long. That was an all-dominant performance from Bonnyville. But can they match their game 2 effort in game 4? We'll find out. If they do, then I think they win the game and will go on to win the series. If they don't and they come out much like they did in game number 3, then Lloydminster certainly has a very good shot, not only in game 4, but for the rest of the series as well.
And you knew Lloyd had to go back up there and do something and put some doubt into Bonnyville that they could actually be beaten. Like, they haven't been beaten in 20 games in regulation, and now you've gone up there and you put that in their heads. If you can go up there and steal game 4 and now bring the tied series, now you're bringing it back home where, you know, crowds in the first 2 games were kind of split, but now you're bringing that momentum back that you've beaten this team who's so red hot. That does open up this series. Like, Bonnyville has to win game 4. That's for them to win this series, in my opinion. You have to win game 4 and stop any momentum that the Bobcats are going to get. Now, Lloydminster wins. I don't know what, like, if you can come back here and expect the same what you're going to get from game 1 and game 2 from Bonnyville.
But you look at Dara and Geary getting goals. That might be a huge benefit for those two, who were really struggling for the first 5-6 playoff games.
Yeah, you can't with those two. If those two start getting going, now you're in problems. Now you have those two. You have Taylor Allen scoring. You have Shane Schweitzer scoring. That you have so many guys now scoring. Geary and Dara, if they get going, they're guys who could take over the series and who could possibly be the game changers that the Bobcats actually need, and that solid scoring line that they've never really had. So. I don't know, but tonight's going to be the big tale. If things go Bobcats' way, this series could go the Bobcats' way pretty quick.
All right, guys, we're going to take a commercial break. When we return, we're going to talk about some great goaltending, and we're not talking about either Troy Tremblay or Devin Green. We're going to talk about Andrew Hammond, the sensation in Ottawa, coming up next.